Okay, welcome back to another installment of the Sharps Toolbox podcast. I was supposed to work on a much more thrilling intro for this week's episode, so you're all just going to have to pretend that really got you fucking hot and ready to go like it was another episode of Joe Rogan or something.
You're also 0-2 in getting the name of the podcast right. Bad Bets for Free podcast, presented
By the Sharps Toolbox. Wow, the Bad Bets for Free podcast presented by the Sharps Toolbox. You know, it's a good thing, though, because we can really only go up from here. So we have a jam-packed show for you today. Zach, you want to tell them what divisions we're going to be going over?
Yeah, we're going to do a quick preview on the AFC and the NFC North division, as well as, AFC, NFC North, as well as the AFC and NFC South. So we're going North and South here, both conferences. You know, it's August 3rd, first preseason games tomorrow, so we'd like to get this kind of rolling here, get through these previews so we can start really diving into power rankings and statistical analysis and everything that we're going to be doing during the season, but we want to lay some groundwork first. So AFC, NFC North, AFC, NFC South.
Yep. We'll be covering all of those teams. Some of the teams we're going to be talking about, the over-under that Vegas has. We'll finally bring a little bit more of gambling into it today. As you remember, we made our first official bet between each other last week.
Is the Dolphins' offense objectively good?
Have an offense. I feel like as much as I love the impending fight that we're going to get into for that about what constitutes a good offense or not, we should find some sort of way to put some parameters around exactly what is a good offense. But
I mean, I guess if we wanted to, we could say, top third or like top 10, I guess. Top 10. Is that good? If you're a top 10 offense in the league,
top 10 offense is like great though.
Well, there's only 32 teams.
Right.
So if you're 16th, you're not even good. You're
average. All right. Top 12.
Top 12. Yeah, I like that.
Right?
Done.
Because I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like though it's only 4 points, the difference between 12 and 16
huge.
It could actually be huge.
And the difference between 12 and 10 is pretty big as well, I think.
Right.
So, yeah, top 12. So they have to be a top 12 offense in the league. Done. Handshake.
Heard it here
camera
first.
and audio.
All right. Why don't you you can start anywhere you want in the world.
Ooh.
You want to kick us off, whichever one of the teams that you want to cover. Let's just get right into it.
Okay. I guess let's start with the NFC North. And I'm going to start with we divvied up 2 and 2. I'm going to start with the worst of the two teams that I was given, which is the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions covered a lot of games last year. They were one of my favorite teams to bet on with the spread just because of how competitive they were in games early on. I mean, there was a lot of, especially first half bets, there was a lot of games where if you took the Detroit Lions in the first half, they covered. You could even take some of their money lines in the first half for a win. And then, they would fall apart at the end of the game. The heartbreaking losses they had, the one that stands out to me the most is actually the Minnesota Vikings game with Kirk Cousins driving down the field with 47 seconds left and 1 timeout or 2 timeouts so that they can set up a game-winning field goal, and Dan Campbell on his hands and knees crying at the middle of the field. Speaking of Dan Campbell.
Kneecaps,
baby. We're biting kneecaps. Speaking of Dan Campbell, though, one of the stats that stood out to me as I dove into, how do we want to talk about the Lions this year? In terms of line movement for the Coach of the Year award, Dan Campbell has received more than any other coach at this point, which is interesting to me because the way I perceive the Lions this year is they're incredibly trendy bad team. I feel like everyone I listen to, everyone who talks about the NFC is like, oh, well, watch out for the Lions because they covered so many games last year, because they, it felt like Jared Goff was holding them back. And I'll tell you what, I liked their offense. There's a lot of games I felt like they were taking concepts from some of the better offenses in the league. I saw a lot of plays that reminded me of San Francisco, quite honestly. I feel like they were an impressive team, especially given expectations. And I get a little wary when you have a bad team who becomes trendy that everyone wants to talk about and everyone gets fired up about them. And oh my God, they got Aiden Hutchinson now, and Penei Sewell looks so good in camp, and DeAndre Swift another year, and they added some wide receiver pieces. And look at the back half of Amon-Ra St. Brown's year. He's so good. He's going to be Justin Jefferson this year. And I don't know if I'm ready to go that far. I think this is still going to be, a fundamentally poor football team. But I do think, that line movement for Coach of the Year tells me, at least one thing, which is that professionals who move those lines, they bet enough to move the lines, and they're respected enough by the books to move the lines. There are professionals out there. Maybe they don't think this is going to be a 10-win team, but they think Dan Campbell could be Coach of the Year. And with this roster, if he wins 8 games, he's a legitimate opportunity to win Coach of the Year. So I guess when I think about the Detroit Lions, I think of it this way. They could be, I think they have, and again, Jared Goff holds them back, in my opinion. I think they have the talent and the roster. I do think this team, though, while they have the talent to only win 4 or 5 games, I do think that they could scrape 7 or 8. They had a lot of close games last year. They covered a lot, obviously. And if they win 7 or 8 games, Dan Campbell for Coach of the Year might be a good bet. I'm not going to sit here and say you should place that bet today, but it could be a good bet. And again, receive the most line. It might be too late with all that line movement, obviously, but this could be a team that scraps and claws and steals some games you're not expecting them to. So keep that in mind as the season goes on, and you look for opportunities to bet the Lions.
So wait, to that point, Vegas right now, updated today, I have the most recent lines in front of me.
Yeah.
Has 6.5 games.
Yeah, 6.5.
Did you just say that?
I didn't say 6.5 games, no, but I said,
You said 7 or 8.
Yeah, look, they could win
Which
7 or 8.
relative to the line that Vegas has right now is not.
Yeah.
That's not far off.
No, it's pretty close. I mean, I think, again, am I sitting here saying you should take the Lions over 6.5 games? No, because 7 games is a lot. And I think that's their ceiling. 7 or 8 games is probably even too much, right? That's their ceiling. And if they have a good year, they steal a couple games, they could certainly win 7 or 8 games. I think 6.5 is the right number. I think 6 games is probably where they fall. If you twisted my arm and said you have to pick a side, I'd probably still take the under. Yeah. But again, I think it's an interesting team, and I would be higher on them if so many other people were high on them.
No, that makes total sense. Yeah. Well, I'm looking at it right here, totally unrelated. But I was just trying to look at to see if I could find a relative team that in my mind I think is a good 6.5, whereas I feel objectively they'd be a shitty 6.5.
Sure.
If that makes any sense. I don't really see anything that jumps off the page at me right there. I feel like that's kind of all that's really the floor. Anything less than that is the Houston Texans at 4.5, the Atlanta Falcons at 4.5.
Bears are
the Bears are at 6.5. The Panthers are 6.5. So that's really just the fucking base. And the thing that I thought was pretty funny, what I want to ask you about, and again, totally unrelated, but the New York Football Giants, we talked about last week.
They're up to 7.5, aren't they?
7.5. Yeah. They are. Look, we shout out. We love when our people know our stuff here on the show. 7.5 though. Does that just kick you right in the dick?
I mean, I would take the under.
You're gonna take the under.
I'll take the under.
Hopefully, we don't have any loyal Giants fans because they're not gonna fucking listen to us anymore.
Well, if they watched the games last year, and I get it, new coach.
You're not gonna be the straw that breaks the camel's back of loyal Giants fans.
Yeah, I mean, I was at Eli Manning's jersey retirement ceremony, and it was the loudest I've cheered all year to boo John Mara off the fucking stage. That goddamn putz.
It's tough. They still put asses in the seats though. The New York Football.
It's packed.
Yeah.
Although last year, I tell you what, the Raiders game, there was a lot of Raiders fans there, man. The Raiders traveled well, and they owned that stadium. You were at the Cowboys game. I sold those tickets. I was like, I can't even go.
Are you going? Are you selling those tickets again, or are you keeping them this year?
I think we're keeping them this year. My dad really wants to go to that game for some reason.
Breaking news live on television.
Breaking news
Mike,
live.
if you're listening, you can't go.
You can't go, bud. Sorry.
All right. Anything else that we want to add?
On the Lions, no, not really. Again, it's a team I would be higher on if I didn't see so many people high on them. And I 6.5 is the right number, I think, because 7 is probably their ceiling, which if that's their ceiling, it's probably more likely they do fall under. But, who knows?
I want to start off with a stat for the Packers. We actually talked about this earlier. I think you and I see this kind of differently.
Wait, do your other one first. Because I want to do Packers Vikings. I guess you do Packers and then I'll go Vikings. I have to go Vikings. Then you can clean up with the Bears. Go ahead. Sorry.
You want me to start? You just want me to start with a shitty one? You want me to start with the Bears?
Yeah, I kind of think it'd be more fun. Start with the Bears, and then we do our best two teams last.
All right, I'll start with the Bears. Of my notes here, I circle shit. This is actually the only thing that I have circled of all of the teams in all of the divisions. I don't know if I'm actually giving this situation too much credit, but I have one thing circled, and it's just Justin Fields. I just have the name Justin Fields circled. Like, what I'm actually about to say, I think we can talk about this with, like, the Packers when we talk about Aaron Rodgers later. Like,
sure.
There's this, I mean, they fucking suck. They're probably the worst team. I mean, if we look at the lines here, the Bears are 6.5. Like, that's 2 more games, which relative is honestly a lot to the, like, 4.5 Falcons, right? But, like, this team is only going to go as far as Justin Fields take them. If Justin Fields doesn't take any sort of step up in year 2, like, I like David Montgomery, right? I like Herbert, whatever his fucking, that other name is.
Khalil Herbert.
Yeah, I think they have a solid, running back thing going on. I think Darnell Mooney is probably the real deal from everything that you read about camp, and everything's really excited about him. But, like,
he was good last year.
Right. If Justin Fields can't get Darnell Mooney the football,
they got a dog shit offensive line.
They have a rookie head coach. I will say, though,
not excited about that defense either.
Not excited about the defense, but I feel like he did do well with the Colts.
Yeah.
For the last 3 years as being their defensive coordinator. Obviously, the Colts have
some talent.
They do have some talent, but they have a solid defense. I think they were, when I looked it up, when he took over in 2017, they were like mid-20th ranked unit, and then they were 10th and 11th last year against the rush and against the pass.
Yeah.
So, like, I mean, yeah, they have talent, but obviously he was a good defensive mind. But we'll see how that translates with the Chicago Bears. 6.5 games. And here's another thing, and this is a wider conversation about how I feel about the NFC in general. I think, and you and I have talked about this too, is I think the NFC is just, it's dog shit. I mean, it just houses a bunch of the shittiest teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
So, like, a Chicago Bears team could just fall into a couple extra wins, like, just out of sheer dumb luck. When you're looking at so early at what's going to happen at the course of the year, if the Chicago Bears play the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions and, like, all these other teams that we talk about that are relatively the same category, if Marcus Mariota gets hurt or if Jared Goff gets hurt, like, all of a sudden now the Chicago Bears are
picking teams off.
Are leaps and bounds ahead of the fucking Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I think the Bears are an interesting team, man. This was a hard one. I'm glad you took that.
This one did suck. I will tell.
I feel like I don't really have an opinion on them, quite frankly. I feel like I'm not a big Justin Fields guy. I know
Justin Fields probably sucks.
I think I haven't seen enough of him, and I haven't seen him in a good offense. And that franchise has done nothing right. I mean, even the drafting of Justin Fields, it was by the same GM that drafted Mitch Trubisky. Like, I can't give them a lot of credit. I honestly, I think they're going to be garbage. I don't even know. I feel like I'm doing a poor job of talking about this team because I have such a lack of opinion on them.
But 6.5 games is like the New York Giants are 7.5 games. The New England Patriots are 8.5 games. Like, if you're looking at the Chicago Bears 6.5 games, I would love to take the under on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. They shouldn't be within 2 games of the New England Patriots.
They should not be within 2. And maybe that says more about the New England Patriots hate, which is obviously trendy. But, like...
Well, I'll say this. Preview to a team that I'm going to be talking about with the AC South. I'd rather have Davis Mills than Justin Fields. Davis Mills threw the rock last year, man. He was the second best quarterback drafted last year, besides Mac Jones.
Yeah, him and his big long neck.
He's got the
Did you see the thing that came out today with his mom?
He's a giraffe.
Did you see his mom? His mom was like giving
No.
financial advice, and his mom was like, "You should reach out to all like clothing companies that sell turtlenecks, and try to see if you can brand with me." That's swear to God, look it up. It was all over Instagram. Today.
That's hysterical.
That
So I was
is-
like, you just reach out to the turtleneck companies.
That is really fucking funny.
Dude becomes a big cashmere guy.
Yeah, that is
Davis
awesome.
Mills, the face of cashmere.
I mean, we laugh, but I would do anything to be Davis.
Could you imagine that commercial? You're sitting there watching, and there's Davis Mills with his long ass neck. He's like cashmere. I don't even know what he sounds like. I've never heard him talk.
Yeah.
Tell you what, he can sling the rock though.
Yeah, and again, another thing reports out of camp, right? And another thing, which is like at this point, it's like, who's coming out and being like, "Oh, this person sucks." Like everyone's fucking,
Yeah,
sick in camp at this point.
no one's like, wow, we're really disappointed in so and so.
Yeah, no one's gonna come out and be like, "You know what, hammer the under on us."
Yeah. You know who looks like dog shit?
Us.
Kenny Galladay. Just fade him. Don't draft him in fantasy. I will say this about Justin Fields, though. He had a couple games where I felt like he was making clear progress. He's finally got a coaching staff that isn't obviously bad. We haven't seen them before. Previously, he had a coaching staff that was obviously bad. The Bears are just such a wild card. It's hard to take a stance on them. There's so many unknowns. And I think, I sit here, I said earlier, I feel like we're doing a bad job explaining them. But maybe that's just the best way to explain them.
That is.
Don't take a stance. That's the thing. People make mistakes in gambling. When they take a stance on something, they don't actually know. When they don't know anything about it, or they don't actually have a stance to take, and they just want to look trendy or have something to say or sound like they're smartest person in the room. Sometimes you just don't know, and the answer to that is don't bet them. Don't
Right. Don't
touch
bet
them.
them. Don't bet them.
Don't
and
touch
honestly, right, because now
Don't bet for or against. Just stay away
Right,
until you get an
100%.
opinion
Because now I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite because I almost want to kind of peel back what I just said.
on the under.
Is because last season they won 6 games, and I firmly believe in my heart that the NFC as just general just sucks.
Dog shit.
Dog shit.
Yeah.
So if they won 6 games last year in what I truly believe was a far more objectively competitive NFC,
Yeah.
Well,
the thing about the NFC, I feel like there's no parity. Like it's feast and famine. Like you got Tampa Bay, you got Green Bay,
you got the Rams.
you got the Rams.
You said the Packers. I mean, even like the
And then
49ers. Like the
and then
49ers. 49ers aren't going to win the Super Bowl, but
Yeah.
they'll beat the shit out of you for 16 weeks in the season.
And last year, like the Cowboys had a great offense.
Yeah.
That looked like the best Cowboys team we've seen in decades. And then this year, it's like Tampa Bay, Los Angeles. I will talk about the Packers. Maybe this is a good transition point. Let's move to the Packers.
The camera really does add 10 pounds, though, I will say.
I mean, I went to the doctor this morning. Yeah. Or wild story. Had an appointment for 1:20 today. Doctor calls me yesterday, says, "Hey, we need you to move it to 1. Is that okay?" Say, "Sure, go to 1." They don't let me in. I get there 15 minutes early. They don't let me in until 2. So I literally told the doctor, I was like, "I'm going to bill you for my time." I was like, "I hope you don't get upset when you receive an invoice for making me wait an hour."
What does that look like? You like counter
I don't know. I haven't thought it through. I was just furious. I was like seeing my head started shaking. I didn't know what was going on. I was so angry. I was like, "How do you call me? Tell me to get here 20 minutes earlier than our scheduled appointment, and then not let me in for an hour?"
Doc, you know what I mean? It's hard. It's hard. Doctors save lives. Although what I will say is it probably gave you some nice time to read up on give you another hour for the Packers though, maybe.
I mean, I was trying to work. I was like making calls and doing insurance in their waiting room. Couldn't believe it. All right, enough about the doctor's office though. Let's talk Packers.
Oh, I'm up again for the Packers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So here, I want to start with a fun fact that I think me and you see a little bit differently, but here is the fun fact. Matt LaFleur has a .796 winning percentage over the last 3 years of his career. The second highest after that is a guy named Guy Chamberlain. I don't even know who the fuck that is. From 1922 to 1927, he had a .784 win percentage, 10 points lower. The next guy, John Madden, everybody knows him, 60s and 70s, right? Vince Lombardi, 50s and 60s. George Allen, 60s and 70s. The first modern name that you hear after that is Jim Harbaugh, 2011 to 2014. After that, back to the 1920s, 1963, 1936, 1920, and then Sean McVay is actually number 10 in 2017. The reason why I bring this up and why I think this is relevant, and you, not to like throw you under the bus, and you know, you don't really fucking care about Matt LaFleur, but I feel like if anything, that proves the point. Even if you were to say it's Aaron Rodgers or it's LeBron James doesn't have coaches, Tom Brady's his own coach, right? Like Aaron Rodgers. Sure, they lost Devontae Adams. Sure, they lost Marquez Valdez-Scantling. That defense is fucking disgusting. That offensive line is fucking disgusting, right? The NFL, their line right now is 10 and a half games. They won 13 games last year. So people are really, that's a significant move in the eyes of a line for people for losing Devontae Adams and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Now, Marquez Valdez-Scantling is a throwaway, right? Like the Devontae Adams one is the big piece. And Devontae Adams, the variables of how much you could talk about that are huge, right? But if a defense that have improved, if an offensive line that improved, that's still led by Aaron Rodgers, I'll take the over. I'll take the over on that. Their wide receiver room reads like a free agent pool in week 13 in your fantasy football league. Allen Lazard, Sammy Watkins, Cobb, and fucking two rookies, Watson and Dobbs, which like are obviously, you know, they got to familiarize themselves with Rodgers, right? You know, being a rookie in an offense with like Aaron Rodgers or Tom Brady is always difficult. Although news, you know, obviously all things are positive out of camp, right? So like
They better be.
They better be. So like I get that. But like either it just doesn't matter that Matt LaFleur is a really good coach because he has Aaron Rodgers, right? Or he actually genuinely is a really good coach, and that describes a lot of it. But regardless of what either of those variables are, the net is the needle going to really move that much in a well-documented kind of shitty NFC that Aaron Rodgers isn't going to be able to walk out there and get 11 wins. He's not going to be able to go 11-6. You don't think that can happen? I'm hammering the over on 11 wins on a 10.5 line right now. 100,000,000%. And I fucking hate Aaron Rodgers. I hate Aaron Rodgers. Tom Brady all day. Aaron Rodgers can suck 3,000 fucking cocks. His own family doesn't fucking like him.
Well, guess who's never coming on our show now? Because you just said that. I had him lined up. Rodgers was going to be here next week.
They're winning 11 games.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing, and I don't necessarily disagree with much of that. The only thing I would push back on is the Matt LaFleur comment. And, you know,
he's the winningest coach of all time if he could qualify. The winningest coach of all time.
So do you remember
all time
when Bill Cowher retired?
Yes.
And Mike Tomlin stepped in.
Yes.
And they were winning. And it was like, well, this roster was already here, and Bill Cowher structured the whole thing, but he's just kept winning. And now we're 12 years, 13, 14, however long it's been, and he's still just winning.
Curious as to where you think this is going, because you also think that Mike Tomlin is like the best coach in the NFL.
Mike Tomlin is.
So what's your point?
Amazing. Well, my point is, when Tomlin first started, had the same questions. Is this Tomlin, or is this already a really great team with great pieces and a great quarterback? I won't know the answer on LaFleur. This year is going to be a big test for him. I think because you lose Adams now, I guess you think about the 3-game change.
But if you think it's all Rodgers,
from 13 to 10.5. Well, let me finish this real quick. Think of it this way: how many points per game do you think Devontae Adams means to that offense?
A lot.
And then I would say probably about 3, which is a lot. That is a lot. That's a whole possession. That is a field goal. That is a scoring possession. So you take 3 points away, and then look at how many games, if they lost those 3 points, what would their record change? If it's 11 instead of 13, then 10.5 is the right number. And I also think, again, going back to LaFleur, this year, if they win, if they go over and they win those 11 games, I will come here and say,
you're taking the under.
I would say, I'm not saying one way or the other. I would say if they get to 11 games, Matt LaFleur is a good coach. because they are going to have to do some creative things. It's not going to be able, because so much of what their offense was the last couple years is Rodgers and Devontae Adams have worked together for years. They come to the line, they see what's set up and what's available, and then they just communicate, and it almost doesn't care. It doesn't matter what's called. It doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. They're just designing plays on the fly and lining up, and they know what they need to do. They can't do that. So LaFleur's going to have to scheme some stuff up. I hope we see a lot of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon in the backfield together.
I love it. I'm A.J. Dillon's a beast.
A.J. Dillon is a grown man. I hated that draft pick when it happened. That was a
And
brilliant
their offensive
move.
line is good.
And their offensive line is
David
good.
Bakhtiari is the man.
Yeah, and when they lost Corey Linsley, I thought it was going to hurt him. It didn't.
No.
They were great.
They're
And
so
like
great.
Rodgers doesn't turn the ball over. He's an incredibly talented quarterback. I'm not saying they're going to be a bad team. I think this is going to be a challenging year for them compared to years past. If they go over that total, I will say LaFleur is a good coach, and I would be
But here's the
a
thing.
hypocrite if I said he wasn't
They
after
have
this.
their pie chart has 3 parts. Their pie chart has 3 parts. There's the part where they hit it just because Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers.
Right,
They have the part where they hit it because turns out LaFleur is actually a good coach.
right.
And then they have the part where they don't hit it. So
Fourth part, that defense.
the defense. So they have more in their favor than they don't have in their favor.
Yeah.
And as much as I fucking can't stand Aaron Rodgers, although it seems like in the later years my guy Brady and Rodgers are better friends. So if Brady likes him, I like him. I feel like you could have Toby Maguire and my fiance running slant routes, and Aaron Rodgers would find him with the football. Like, he's fucking Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
He's
he's
might
stud.
be the most talented quarterback to ever play the position.
Yeah, I don't disagree
Him,
with that.
Peyton Manning,
John
a
Elway,
bunch of old farts that other people would like to throw their names to
Otto
fucking
Graham.
be trendy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moonlight Graham from fucking the
I don't know the
Dreams.
reference.
Field of Dreams.
Oh, sure. Never saw that movie. But that's cool too.
I don't know, dude. I mean, yeah, their defense.
Wait, can we talk about the defense for a second, Devin? Because I feel like we're talking about the defense as if it's an accepted factor that this is going to be a great defense. I don't know if people realize that this is going to be a great defense.
Sick.
They
Secondary sick. Alexander, Amos.
Yeah, their defensive line, their interior defensive line, strong, and they added pieces. They continued to add to it in this draft. They have a lot of young, fast, talented players on that defense, and a lot of them, this is either their first or second year in that defense. For the second year players, getting that, second year of experience is going to be huge. And when you can inject some other, talented first year players into a defense and add, again, it's clear they went for speed and size. I mean, they got some big guys that can fly. I think their defense is going to be very talented. I think, and again, with the 2 running backs, I wouldn't be surprised if this was think like what everyone thought the Browns were going to be last year. A lot of play action, running the football, and then a great defense. I think it could be a lot closer to that, but infinitely better because Aaron Rodgers is up here and Baker Mayfield is a league average starting quarterback.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe even a little bit below league average.
Maybe, yeah.
But he is a starting quarterback.
He is.
Anything? Yeah. Anything else you want to talk about with the Packers?
No. But anytime, you're ahead of a guy named Guy Chamberlain from 1922, that's the only other person that's done what you've done, I feel like you're in rarefied air.
The only Chamberlain I care about is Will.
Well, it was him and fucking Guy Chamberlain and fucking Jesus Christ hanging out in 1922 together.
If by Jesus Christ you mean John Madden, then yes, I accept.
All right, let's keep it moving. Let's go
Keep
to the
it
Vikings.
moving. R.I.P. John Madden, the GOAT. So on to the Vikings. The Vikings are an interesting situation because, more often than not, when you have the rookie head coach, when you have a brand new staff, even if it is established, I want to fade them. I'm really excited about the Vikings this year. Kevin McConnell comes in from the McVay tree. Their offensive coordinator, Wes Phillips, comes in from the McVay tree. Defensive coordinator, Ed, I can't pronounce his name, Donatel, very Italian, was just with Vic Fangio in Denver for 3 years. That Vic Fangio defense, if you watch the film, if you listen to people who know what they are talking about, he is changing the way defense is played with the match zone concepts that they use. And what match zone is, everyone knows what zone is, everyone knows what man. A match zone is zone that turns into man when certain people run certain routes. So you're making a read where, like, hey, I'm 2-1 and I'm playing this zone, but if 3 goes vertical, I'm going vertical with 3, essentially. Very, very simplified explanation of match zone. But what they were doing in Denver was really changing the way other teams are playing defense, and other teams are adopting it. So he's bringing this very innovative defensive design to Minnesota. Meanwhile, Kevin O'Connell is bringing Sean McVay's really, really innovative offensive design. And Kirk Cousins is coming off the single greatest year he's ever had. The first year he's been an undisputed top 10 quarterback. And I'd argue, he was knocking on the door of top 5 in terms of pure statistical output. They've got weapons with Jefferson and Cook and Thielen. The offensive line is improved. The defense probably still needs some help, honestly, from a personnel perspective. But I do think that, the introduction of Ed as their defensive coordinator is going to be big. I'm excited about this team. I think they bring a lot to the table. And, I can't. And other thing, obvious, overlook this. This is something everyone talks about, though. Kevin O'Connell was Kirk Cousins' quarterback coach for 3 years in Washington. They know each other really well. So it's like there's no lack of continuity. They have continuity. It's going to be exciting. And that was under Kyle Shanahan, when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator in Washington. So you got some interesting stuff going on. I'm excited for the Minnesota season. And, we talked about before this podcast, don't just put bets out there if you don't believe in the bet or if maybe you haven't made it yourself. I have taken Minnesota to win this division at plus 240, and I'm going to stand by that. I think there's value there. And as excited as we both are about some of the things that Green Bay can do this year, I think Minnesota's going to give them a run for their money. And where we just talked about lack of parity, I think Minnesota can take that next step for them to be, maybe not an elite team in the NFC. No one's saying that. Maybe not even like a great team, but a very solid, good team that can win 9-10 games this year, maybe even more. And I think they'll certainly contend for the NFC North.
Do we want to make that our second bet? We can start a new segment where we do bet of the
pod,
bet of the sode.
Bet of the sode.
Bet of the sode.
I like bet of the pod better.
Bet of the pod bet. Pod sode.
The podisode.
What's your pod bet? I will bet you that the Packers win the division.
Well,
I know you might not necessarily feel confident enough, but you did say that you just took.
No, I have the Vikings, but I also have the Vikings at plus 240. So
you're not taking a straight bet on me.
I'm not
just
doing
as boys.
No,
you're scared. You're scared for the Packers.
I'm not going to take a worse.
We don't
number.
even need to necessarily do like a monetary thing. We could actually, the world's our oyster here. We could just like come up with like a whiteboard and just tally all of our sewed bets and see which of
who's got the best record.
Who had the best record of just the ass hat bets that we make.
We could even put the odds in there too, so you get a real ROI in like units gained.
Wow, neither of us have the fucking chops to do the math for that, but maybe we can outsource that to our intern.
I already have. We have forms. We're good. I got spreadsheets, buddy.
All right, yeah, I'm down for that. So wait, are we gonna bake all of that into the total and like recalibrate all of that shit at the end?
Yeah. So we created. No book is offering. Is Miami going to be a good offense? So that's even money between us. But in this one, like you would lay, I think the Packers are like minus 190 to win the division, and I would put.
But are we going to hit that? It's like, are we going to
Yes.
do a rough calculation of all of the odds of everything all together?
Yeah, we'll just keep it all track. So next episode there will be a whiteboard, and we will have those two sewed bets on our list, and then anything we add from here on out will also be on.
Okay.
All right, sick idea, dude.
Yeah.
Great job.
Thanks, man.
Dude,
That's what they pay me the big bucks for.
We're paying you?
Yep. Yeah, let's get the intern on that one.
Let's get the intern on that.
Okay, anything else you'd like to add? I will just...
No, I want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about the Vikings?
My favorite thing about the Vikings is in our fantasy football league that we're in,
yes,
I get Justin Jefferson in the 5th round.
Yeah, shout out to keepers based on draft pick rounds.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Dope.
Yeah, if you don't really get all that, you might think that it's a stupid fucking league, but pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah, it is dope.
Yeah, I love that. No, I'm with all that. I love the air raid offense.
Your team's still gonna suck.
Yeah, I love everything about that. I actually think like Thielen still has a little bit left in the tank. I like what I saw towards the end of the year from KJ Osborne. I think like even if Dalvin Cook does go down, Madison is good. Like
he's a player.
Madison's a player. Like I'm a big offensive guy. That's really where I obviously put all my attention in. You know, I think the Vikings defense, you know, as you had mentioned, like isn't really necessarily turning any super heads. You know, they're gonna have to step up there a little bit, but that offense is primed. I mean, Jay Jettas is ready to. I don't know. I maybe have to redact that for
Wait,
Ja'Marr Chase.
who's better? Yeah, I was gonna say who's better. Who would you rather?
Did you saw what I was about to say?
Yeah, I felt.
You saw it in my mind that I was
100%. Who's better? Who? Let me put it this way: who, if you're starting a team today, not a fantasy team, a real NFL team, and they come to you and say, okay, you know, you have to pick between Justin Jefferson, Ja'Marr Chase. Who are you building a franchise with first?
You want to know what my knee-jerk reaction is to that?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, you know, it's just an opinion. I'm sure people fucking might think that this is a shitty opinion, but my knee-jerk reaction to that.
Lots of those.
My knee-jerk reaction to that was Justin Jefferson, because I think Joe Burrow is a stud, and I think Joe Burrow is light years ahead of Kirk Cousins. No offense to Kirk Cousins. That doesn't mean that Kirk Cousins is a shit quarterback. But I just think that what Joe Burrow is helping Ja'Marr Chase more than Kirk Cousins is helping Justin Jefferson.
I'm going to agree with that, and I'm also going to take Jefferson, and I'm going to twist slightly the way you phrased it. It's not that Joe Burrow is so much better than Kirk Cousins, which he is. No one here is saying Kirk Cousins is better than Joe Burrow. But I think the continuity of Joe Burrow and Ja'Marr Chase having played together in college is very valuable. And the fact that they came in right away, they know each other. Like, I think that in of itself inflates Ja'Marr Chase's numbers a little bit. Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins don't have that. And like, you couldn't find, I don't know either of them personally, but I'm assuming you could not find more opposite individuals than Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson. Justin Jefferson is swaggy as hell, and Kirk Cousins is Mr. You like that.
Kirk Cousins, everyone has a cousin.
Yeah,
that's Kirk Cousins. It's just for whoever is Kirk Cousins' cousin.
Yeah,
your cousin just happens to be Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, yeah. But we all have cousins.
We all have a cousin that's Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Just that that's like the most evolved version of the Pokemon of Kirk Cousins that like actually made it to the NFL.
He's 3 layers.
But Kirk Cousins is just like a white dude that went to your college that can throw a football, that made it into the NFL.
Super dorky.
And is pretty good.
Yeah. Never dated a pretty girl in his life.
No, I'm sure he fucks bad bitches.
Well, now he does.
The name of this episode is Kirk. The name of this episode, I don't know if I'm looking at the camera right, but the name of this episode is Kirk Cousins knocks the bottom out. That's what we're going to call the episode of this podcast.
Yes. Intern.
I mean, you know Kirk Cousins. Like, how can we look up how tall Kirk Cousins is real quick? We're gonna have to edit the shit.
He could be Kyler Murray's size. It doesn't matter. He's an NFL quarterback.
No, because we really are gonna have to edit the fuck out of these. Kirk Cousins is. Google just doesn't give me a quick height and weight real quick.
I'm gonna guess 6'4", 235.
Yeah. Either way, the point that I'm trying to make here is Kirk Cousins has a fucking wrench on him.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins has fucked some hot girls.
Okay.
For purposes of the video,
Just saying, he's a fucking dork. The guy's a dork.
Can we get Kirk Cousins' wife? You know what? Not gonna lie.
Not that cute.
Oh, dude. Here's the thing about Kirk Cousins. Isn't he like he's super religious, right?
Very.
Super religious.
Very.
Okay.
Why are you looking at a picture of it right now?
I'm looking at a picture of his wife right now. We'll keep it moving. What's understood doesn't.
Wait. I just want to make sure I was right.
Yeah, that one's not going to get on the board. That one's not going to make the whiteboard. That bet's already been determined. Ding. Okay. All right. That's a point for Zach, but not an official point because the bet doesn't count. All right. Let's keep it moving. Although actually, I feel like potentially maybe we should.
Let's keep it moving. Let's go to the AFC North.
Yeah.
Let's keep it in the North. Let's go to the AFC.
Right.
Do you want to open it up?
Yeah, I'll open it up. I'll start with Cleveland.
Sure.
Just because it's such a hot.
Keep in mind, it is August 3rd while we are filming this. So Roger Goodell 3-4 hours ago appealed the 6-game suspension. The NFL appealed the 6-game suspension, which means Roger Goodell will be the ultimate decider of how long he'll be suspended. Which, by the way, what's the point of the judge in the first place if Goodell can step in and say, you know what? Actually, fuck you. I get to decide again.
You know, I haven't actually thought about that yet. That's a
a
really good point.
What a dumb thing for the players to arbitrate for. How do you do that?
I think it's like you get to hide behind your mom a little bit. Because it's like, because if the judge comes out with something that the NFL is satisfactory, then the NFL gets to wipe their hands of it.
I'm going to take it a step further. They get to see the public reaction to what the NFL wants in the first place, and then they can step in and be the heroes of like, well, look, the independent arbitrator couldn't get it done. They gave 6 games. The public went ballistic, so we gave them a whole season. And like then they get to, it almost gives them a buffer to literally like behind in their mind. It gives them a buffer to find out what the public going to kill us for what we want to do, and do we need to adjust? Because the way it was before, they didn't get a second chance. Now they get a second chance.
I feel like when all that shit went down with Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, I'm talking WWE Attitude Era.
Okay.
I think at that point, all of the writers for the WWE went and started working for the NFL. Because you just can't, it's like a bad villain. Like, you can script all of this shit. It's really like reality TV. Roger Goodell, the NFL, I mean, it's fucking crazy. I just think behind closed doors, everything that you're talking about right there, people are thinking about all of that shit.
100%.
The court of public opinion, scheming everything up, all of that.
Also,
100%. And shame on you for not knowing Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero.
Dude, I don't know WWE. But to that point of what you just said, how about the fact that they dropped the Miami Dolphins tampering allegation, or tampering lawsuit on the MLB deadline? Juan Soto gets traded, and the NFL's like, actually, this is still our day. I know it's your deadline. This is America, and we're the king.
Last year they had games on Christmas.
Yeah, which is like supposed to be the NBA. It's big day. This year, the way they're doing it, they've 3 games on Christmas again, and on Christmas Eve is the most of the games. So most of the games are on Saturday, and then they're literally just lining up like, hey, you got 3 games on Sunday. Like, enjoy.
This is obviously not the point of the show. We love baseball. We love basketball. We're just obviously super sports fans. Nothing makes me happier than we get to watch football on Christmas.
It's the best thing in the world. It's the best thing in the world.
I don't fucking care about. Just give me all of the football. I'd watch a football game giving my vows to my fucking fiance next fall. Like,
Do you want that? I can make that happen.
We're getting married on a Saturday. We're not sick fucks.
We could put college on.
Yeah, I guess that's not the same for me personally.
Fair enough.
Opinion, I guess I went to a school that no one's ever heard of, not the Ohio State or anything like that. All right, Cleveland.
Yeah, go ahead. We got a little off the rails there.
From a betting standpoint,
sure.
I think if you're purely just looking for risk reward, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're looking at what's going on right now, we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you wanted to just put a fat bet on the under right now, they're still at 8.5 games.
Yeah, it's crazy that it hasn't moved today. It's crazy that it hasn't moved today.
That's a big number. Like the Miami Dolphins, 8.5 games. New England Patriots, 8.5 games. Cincinnati Bengals are 9.5 games. Baltimore Ravens are 9.5 games. Like, the only teams that are higher than 8.5 games are like the top teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
Like, if you're if you have a couple $100 that you don't fucking give a shit about, that could end up netting you a pretty good return, that you want to hammer.
Me?
I'm just saying why. Like, I would love that.
Yeah, I like the under on the Browns, and I think we talked a little bit about this before the pod. My concern isn't that Deshaun Watson's going to get 16 games and it's going to be my concern with that bet, and I think if I had to make one, I would take the under. But my concern is, okay, let's say Goodell comes out and gives him 16 games and or the season 17 games, says you're done for this year, you're not playing. They appeal it, the NFLPA, and then weeks 1 through 4, they're going through the appeal process. Does Deshaun Watson get to play? Because if he gets to play, they have a cupcake schedule weeks 1 through 4. So if they go out there and he goes and makes them 4-0 to start the season, then the suspension kicks in and Deshaun Watson's done. Well, now the Cleveland Browns with Jacoby Brissett have 13 games to go win 5.
The NFLPA came out, and this was a major headline 2 days ago. Sounded familiar. I don't know if this is true. I don't know if you heard this.
Sure.
But the NFLPA came out and said that they will not appeal Deshaun Watson ruling.
Really? Oh, well, then throw that theory out. Hammer the under. I think that's safe. I'm actually surprised that today, with everything that's happened, it has gone down to 7.5. And by the time we release this podcast, because we're kind of doing a thing where we're accumulating a couple, getting them out there, so when people, stumble upon us, they don't think we're weirdos with one podcast, and we have at least a couple out there.
They're definitely going to think we're weirdos.
They're definitely going to think we're weirdos regardless. But, it's probably going to be at 7. I might hit that today.
And here's the thing. Like, I don't mind Jacoby Brissett.
No,
I think Jacoby Brissett is a perfectly fine game manager.
He's a top 45 quarterback. Like, he's one of the better backups in the league.
And after we saw last year, which was like one of the cool storylines from last year, was Dearness Johnson.
Yeah.
Remember that? Like,
that was a
two-game
great
stretch
day.
where Dearness.
That was a great day.
And it was like towards the end of it was like
He
when
had
you
the one
huge game, and it was like a primetime game too, right?
Yeah.
Where he just
I think it was Thursday night football.
He just fucking
he had almost
ate,
200
dude.
yards rushing.
And he just looks like the man.
Yeah.
He's just playing bruiser football.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was fucking awesome, dude.
That was
I had
sick.
him playing in my fantasy league. I was sitting there watching the game, just jumping off my fucking couch for Dearness Johnson. So, like, it's a good team.
It is a good team.
They have Nick Chubb, they have Kareem Hunt, they have Dearness Johnson. Like, I think that Jacoby Brissett can be be in competitive football games.
Yeah.
But like 8.5 games
It's a lot.
is a fucking lot.
That's the thing with the NFL now, too, with this schedule. There's no 8-8. You're either a winning team or a losing team. So if you have Jacoby Brissett for your entire season, I don't care if you're the 85 Bears. And I like Jacoby Brissett. Again, he is one of the better backups in the league. He is not winning you 9 games. He's just not.
No, you're not winning 9 games with Jacoby Brissett. I think that might be the first bet that I actually take. I might hammer the Cleveland under. Just
8.5.
Just
I
cause.
like it.
Just cause.
I think you're going to get crazy closing line value on that season total, too, because by the time the season starts, especially if he gets, even if it's not the whole season, even if it's 10 games, 12 games, if you have Jacoby Brissett for 10 or 12 games, it's going to be really hard to win 9 for the whole season.
Yeah, that is tough. All right, let's keep it rolling.
All right. I'll go to the other B team in the AFC North, which is the Bengals. I think the Bengals are an interesting team because they just made it to the Super Bowl. And I feel like as much as people are talking about the Lions as this, they're going to take a huge step forward, I don't hear people talking about the Bengals. I almost feel like I hear more people talking about how the Bengals are due for regression, which that's not how that season felt to me. I felt like watching the Bengals all year long, they were a team that started the season, and I was still concerned about their offensive line. Joe Mixon wasn't getting the running lanes he needed. Joey Burrow was certainly slinging the rock, but T. Higgins wasn't doing anything mind-blowing in my opinion, and Tyler Boyd was taking a bit of a step back, and I wasn't sold on Zach Taylor. But as you watch their team, they got better and better and better every single week, it felt like to me. And then I also want to talk about the Bengals defensive line. Look, Hubbard, Hill, Reeder, and Hendrickson. That D-line is bad, man. Those are some bad men. DJ Reeder's a dog. BJ Hill, as a Giants fan, that trade still haunts me. We gave up a literal bag of used footballs and old practice pennies for BJ Hill. We just said, here, we don't want him anymore. And he's a dog, dude. Like, I would have rather had BJ Hill and Dalvin Tomlinson than Leonard Williams 20 out of 5 times. Like, that ridiculous. Anyway, don't want to get on a soapbox about this. Hubbard's a legit dog. Hubbard is a top 15 defensive end in the league. Top 16. He is one of the best defensive ends, not just because of his ability to get pressure on the quarterback, but he's a great setter of the edge. He turns things back inside. He can get off blocks. He's great in the run game. He is very talented. He's their best player. And then Trey Hendrickson on the other side. Look, Trey Hendrickson, I loved him when he was with the Saints. He looks so weird when he's out there running around. It's such a unique style of play. But he might hustle. I think he's got the highest motor of any defensive lineman in the league, including that man named Aaron Donald. Trey Hendrickson's motor is through the fucking roof. I love watching him play, and he's always looking for the football. I'm very big on the Bengals defensive line, and I think that helps where they're a little weaker, which is in the secondary. You know, Eli Apple's still out there playing starting corner for that team. Eli Apple has some issues. Now, I'm not going to clown on him the way people love to clown on him. I think part of that is because of how he left the Giants, his presence on Twitter. He's a cocky guy, and I think because of that, his mistakes are exaggerated. He is a quality starting corner. Is he above average? No. He can, but you can roll him out there. It's not like when the Chiefs had, I forget the kid's name now, the safety who was just getting burnt left, right, and center last year to start the season for them. Number 47, Sorensen, I think.
That sounds familiar.
But anyway, to get back to this, I think the offensive line help they picked up with La'el Collins, and they invested in where they were weak on offense. They have one of the best wide receiver trios in the league. And Joey B is that guy.
Joey B is that guy.
Joey B is that guy. I am still not sold on Zach Taylor. I think Zach Taylor has a lot to prove. I think they'd be much better off with a different head coach. But I like their defense, especially in the interior. I think their defensive, if they stay healthy, look, this team is good, and I don't see them going backwards. I see them contending again. They're going to be in the playoffs. The NFC North is tougher than I think people are giving it credit for. I think the Bengals team is very good. Do I have a bet for you on this one? Not particularly. But I would say just keep in mind, if you're getting points with the Bengals, anytime Joe B is in that game, they could win. If you're getting points with the Bengals, very seriously consider betting that team, especially because their defensive line is going to continue to be disruptive. And if you have a disruptive defensive line and a quarterback who's a killer, you can win any game, which was proven in the playoffs last year with the Bengals.
The line's 9.5, which is actually one of the rare.
Yeah.
They won 10 games last year. I feel like it's one of the, everyone's gone for regression, like you said. The thing that is difficult there is, as we've talked about, the AFC, like this might be, at least in our lifetime, the year that it's the most uneven.
Yeah.
Between the conferences.
Yeah. There was a couple years when we were young that the NFC was like clearly better than the AFC.
It was the Patriots and it was the Colts and it was bust.
And then it was no one else. And the NFC was really good.
The NFC was really good. Yeah. But so again, objectively, the Cincinnati Bengals could be a very, very, very good football team. And just some calls don't go their way. Some balls don't bounce their way.
Sure.
So if you're sitting there at the end of the year and you're like, oh, the Bengals won 9 games, right? But I just don't. I think the Bengals are fucking. The one weakness that they had objectively was their offensive line. And they completely overhauled their offensive line.
They addressed it.
They had one weakness and they completely addressed it. And now I feel like their offensive line's got to be objectively one of the top units.
I think it's good. I would say
it's a top 12, top 15 unit.
It's
above average.
It's definitely in the top half.
Yeah.
We got to see him play, right? But I would say they project to be top half.
That defense, twice, at the end of the regular season, and then again in the playoffs. And I think something might have been going on with that Chiefs team. I mean, Tyreek got out. There's some weird shit that was going on there.
Well,
I think
you heard about all this stuff with Bieniemy and Reed.
Yeah.
And,
which
we can get into when we talk about the NFC.
We can talk about all that too.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, all right. So obviously there's some weird shit going on. But in 2 second halves against those Chiefs, that Bengals defense nutted up. Everyone wants to talk about, because obviously offense gets all the glory, their wide receivers and Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
Right. But that defense, from what we saw at the end of the year last year, and even in the Rams game in the Super Bowl, that was a tight, good game. I know OBJ goes down, but that was a tight, good game until the end there.
Yeah.
Like their defense played solid.
And if it wasn't, and again, going back to Zach Taylor, not sold on him. If it wasn't P. Ryan on the field on that crucial third or 4th and 1, and it's Joe Mixon, maybe you get it, right? Like that game easily could have gone in the Bengals' favor. To your point, though, continue. Sorry,
real Marshawn Lynch situation right there, huh?
Not as bad, but bad.
Bad.
Yeah.
And then I also like, and again, this isn't anything we talk about. Is like people aren't going to be like, oh fuck that guy, right? But like I saw who's the TJ
Houshmandzadeh.
Did you see that interview?
No.
He was on like one of the ones, like it was like Barstool or something. He was talking to the guys.
No free advertising.
No free ads. Although I mean, I like fucing love Barstool if you ever wanted to talk to us.
Come on.
I don't know. Sorry. Shout out Barstool. Shout out Prez. Shout out Saratoga Racetrack. He was just saying like he's that dude. And it just sounded like so much conviction when TJ was saying it. Like, I just really firmly believe. Like, and what's the one story when he was in college? You hear that story? When they get into like a scruff at the offensive line, and they turn around and it's like, oh, normally someone would throw the first punch or whatever, and like they find out that Joe Burrow's the one that threw the first fucking punch at the offensive lineman in practice. Just like shit like that. Like everywhere you go, even in a very small amount of time, the legend of smoking Joe Burrow. And I feel like this is very much a situation of like where there's smoke, there's fire.
Sure.
Is Joe Burrow is that fucking dude.
Can I say something outrageous that you might leave the podcast?
I don't know. You're at my house. I might ask you to leave.
Well,
okay, go.
I heard someone who I really respect, who is a professional bettor, and he's 20 years older than us. And he said to me about Joe Burrow, he said, honestly, it reminds me so much of when Tom Brady took over the Patriots and was just a guy, because it felt like every time he had to rise to a challenge, he did it. And every time, and like people didn't believe it at first. And I'll say this about like the Bengals last year, I didn't back them. I took the Raiders in the wild card weekend, and then I didn't touch them in the divisional round. I just didn't. I was like waiting for them to run out, but Joe Burrow kept winning and just kept doing what had to be done. And obviously, Evan McPherson was a big part of it too with the kicks that he was making. But you still have to move the football, and he made clutch throw after clutch throw, and he just feels different. Like it feels
like he's the dude.
Yeah.
Did you also, Evan McPherson, did you see the viral video from earlier this week?
The 75, the one that would have been good from like 75.
He kicked it from fucking New Orleans
I mean,
through the fucking talk about a guy who has a fucking third leg.
Yeah.
Just a fucking
yeah
schlong on that guy.
All right, we're gonna have to stop talking about penises. Eventually,
that's how
I'm not saying
really
now. That's not your last
really
one.
drive that home.
Eventually, we're gonna have to. Stop
What's the over under
cock.
on the years? The cock references. So yeah, I think Joe Burrow's that dude. I was actually, that was the day that they played that game was the day the Patriots and Bills played.
Yeah.
That was the game before the Patriots and the Bills, and I was at
Ralph Wilson Stadium.
Yeah, and
or no, Orchard
Park.
Orchard Park.
And we were in this pretty sick like bar, and we were all watching that game.
Oh yeah, you with Carl, weren't you?
I was with a bunch of boys. Yeah. I actually went with my good buddy Kyle, and all of these like diehard Bills fans who love Josh Allen were just getting up for Joe Burrow. Like he just has that effect on you. So yeah, so I like the Bengals. I'll take the over on the Bengals. I think the Bengals are cool. Let's keep moving.
Yeah, I would take the over too.
Yeah, I'll take the over. 9.5 games on the Bengals. I like the Bengals.
All right,
Jamar Chase is a beast.
Talk to me about the Steelers.
The Steelers. Mike Tomlin has had how many losing records in the NFL?
0.
Ben Roethlisberger was like a great quarterback last year.
He sucked, man.
Sucked, dude. Sucked. We talked about this one a little bit before.
I'm pretty sure. And like, I don't have an arm. I really don't. I can't. I probably can't throw the ball 30 yards downfield, but neither could Big Ben.
I think this is my favorite one. 7.5 for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This might be my favorite. I think I'm going to take the Cleveland under and the Pittsburgh Steelers over after this pod. 7.5. Pod bets. Here's what I think.
I'll add it to the board.
Here's what I think. One of my really
I also
really
like the 7.5 over for the Steelers.
Absolutely.
All day long.
One of my hippie friends that I lived with in college, Dominic, huge Bears fan. I loved nothing more than just shitting on him about everything about Mitch Trubisky. Sure. I mean, that was peak. That was right when we were finishing up, when we were getting graduated, when he got drafted, when they moved up and they traded and sold the house to take him 2 overall. Like, and
Patrick Mahomes was
still there, dude. And wasn't Watson part of that draft too?
Yeah, he was.
I mean, dude, like that's got to be one of the worst fucking moves of all time.
They drafted an ACC quarterback, and it wasn't Deshaun Watson. Although maybe it's better to have Mitch Trubisky than Deshaun Watson.
I guess I get if you're in a church for sure. So the thing that I say to bring all that up, we're gonna have to take a lot of this out.
A lot of this is getting pulled. Yeah.
You cannot convince me. If you want to say leadership, potentially, sure. If you want to say pre-snap reads, sure. But at the end of the day, you got to drop back and you got to throw a football. You cannot tell me that the ghost of Ben Roethlisberger is going to be that much better than Mitch Trubisky.
I mean, I think it was obvious. You know how when you watch a game and it's prime time and they show next gen stats and they talk about how quickly the quarterback gets it out of their hands. You know how Ben was at the top of the league the last few years? That's not because he was so good at making pre-snap reads and he just identified where to go right away. It's because he couldn't throw the ball down the field. And their offensive line was abysmal. And he would just get it and get it out of his hands as fast as he could. And they drew it up that way because Tomlin's a fucking genius. And it was just like, get it and go. Because if you asked him to throw the ball deeper than 20 yards downfield, it was going to be inaccurate. And it was probably going to be very bad for the offense. It was probably going to get picked.
Which sucks because, like, you're outside of Tom Brady, Father Time comes knocking for everyone.
Yeah, he does.
You know?
Yeah, he does.
So it's like, that sucks. We all grew up loving fucking Ben Roethlisberger, dude. One of the first OG Barstool shirts, like you couldn't even make it right now, was Ben Roethlisberger assaulting chicks and throwing picks.
Yeah,
I
funny.
I wanted it so bad, but there's no way my mom would have let me wear that.
No shot.
15. But I also think, in another thing, which is also timely that we just talked about, is Brian Flores is a good coach.
Brian Flores is a great coach.
You have Mike Tomlin, you have Brian Flores, and that defense.
Don't hit that. That sounded awful.
Oh, sorry. That defense their offensive line sucks. Run the thing that you said to me earlier.
Oh, so the Pittsburgh Steelers. Shout out to Adam Chernoff for pointing this out. The Pittsburgh Steelers have spent more money on their defense than any team in the NFL, and the least amount of money on their offense compared to every team in the NFL. So they have the cheapest offensive line, but they have the most expensive defense in the NFL, and that is not overpaying guys. That's Micah Fitzpatrick. That's fucking Miles Jack. That's Devin Bush, TJ Watt, Cameron Hayward. I mean, they have dogs all over that defense.
And in 2018,
this is going to be
which does feel like
a good team,
a lifetime ago,
defensively.
But like, he's had some time away. It's not like he's been playing consistently since 2018. But 2018, they won 11 games. The Bears, Matt Nagy, Trubisky, they went to the playoffs. That team was a defensive team with a solid run game that Mitch Trubisky just didn't fuck up. So this Pittsburgh Steelers team, Najee Harris might touch the ball. Can we make a prop bet for Najee Harris over under? Najee Harris might touch the ball. Najee Harris has a ball in his hand running around right now. Najee Harris might touch the ball 1,300 times this year. I think he touched the ball like 350 times.
I was going to say he might have 400.
Najee Harris is running with a football in his hands, getting hit by dudes right now. So they're not going to have Mitch Trubisky fuck up. They're going to be fine. Their defense is loaded. They have 2 amazingly caliber head coaches running that team with also, I'm going to say, giant chips on their shoulder. I think Mike Tomlin has a huge chip on his shoulder coming into this year, and I think Brian Flores obviously has a huge chip on his shoulder, and I think the two of them are sitting in a room right now, probably much similarly to the two of us, thinking how they can go scorched earth on the world this year.
Yeah, I also think, Mitch Trubisky is a talented football player.
Is he?
He is talented, But was he in a good situation in Chicago? Absolutely not. Matt Nagy should never even talk. He should never say the word football ever again. He should be shot into the sun.
Matt Nagy's definitely not coming onto the podcast.
No, he will. I don't want him to ever talk about football again.
He should be shot into the sun.
He should be shot into the sun. That was one of the most embarrassing offensive schemes that I have ever seen. That, along with the Jason Garrett Giants. Anyway, Matt Nagy was a bum. Trubinsky had some talent. You don't win games. And I'll never forget, it was I think his third year going into the NFL, where the biggest liability in Vegas was to win MVP was Mitch Trubinsky. That doesn't happen on accident. There were flashes. That team couldn't develop him, and they were a joke of a franchise, still are. Mitch Trubinsky could surprise people. And again, this defense, I'll tell you this, I would put money on them to be the #1 defense in the NFL. And I think the addition of Flores as your defensive coordinator now, I mean, this team is going to be
Chase
very
Claypool.
well
Chase
coached.
Claypool has another year under his belt. Deontay Johnson is one of the most underappreciated wide receivers in the NFL.
sure.
This George Pickens kid, I know everything out of camp is always positive, but they're acting like this George Pickens kid is the fucking next coming of Jerry Rice from everything that you fucking hear in camp right now.
Well, two things. If there's one thing the Steelers draft very well, it's wide receiver. And develop wide receiver. And a lot of people said, hey, this Pickens kid's the most talented wide receiver coming out of the draft. The reason he's going to fall is because he's a fucking head case. Well, there's a guy in Pittsburgh who's really talented. 5th-round draft pick. His name was Antonio Brown. I think you might have. I think Mike Tomlin's going to be just fine with him. I think they'll figure it out. You know what I mean? I like the Steelers, and I agree with you. I think this could be. I tell you what. I would also say I don't think they'll come in last place in that division.
Oh no.
I would say Browns for sure will be last place if Deshaun Watson loses the full year. But I like the Steelers this year, man.
All right, let's keep moving on that note.
All right, so the final team in the AFC North, we got the Baltimore Ravens. Look, the Baltimore Ravens. They were 7-2 before Lamar went down. They had injuries all over the field, offense and defense. Harbaugh's a great coach.
Harbaugh's a great coach.
Look, they fired their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale. He's now in New York. The guy they brought in was on their staff for 10 years before he left last year. You know where he went? The Michigan Wolverines. So he was getting coached by John Harbaugh. So their defense fundamentally, scheme-wise, I don't see much change coming. So you're still going to see a lot of man coverage, pressure heavy, same split, stun, same type of, coverages, and I just probably a lot of the same language, quite frankly, terminology. I don't think you're going to see a lot of disruption. There's not going to be a huge learning curve for the defense. They're going to be healthier. And Lamar Jackson, I don't understand when people hate on Lamar Jackson. I know when they say, oh, well, he needs to throw the ball more. He doesn't throw it downfield enough. I don't think that's a Lamar Jackson problem. I think that's a Greg Roman deal, their offensive coordinator. I would like to see Greg Roman also shot into the sun.
Roman Swipes. Maybe we could get sponsored by Roman Swipes at some point. Greg Roman Swipes shot up into the sun. Continue.
Yeah. I think the Ravens are going to be just fine. I'm not a big fan of their offense and the way they run it, but I think they should just let Lamar be Lamar.
I think Lamar's going to eat fantasy.
Lamar's going to eat in general, dude.
From a fantasy perspective, again, Lamar, what I just said about Najee Harris is true about Lamar Jackson. Somewhere right now, Lamar Jackson is just running around with a football in his hand. Yeah, I promise you.
They were 7-2 with him, and they didn't win a game without him.
Yeah.
But he's going to be fine. This is going to be a good team. They're also set at 9.5. This is going to be a tough division, and this is kind of what I'm like. The Ravens are a minus money favorite. I want to say they're like minus 130, minus 135. to win the NFC North. I wouldn't touch that. I wouldn't lay money on anyone in this division. I would much rather have plus money with the Bengals, and I'd probably even take a stab at a large plus money. I want to say it's like 450, I'm guessing. I don't know off the top of my head, with the Steelers. But yeah, the Ravens will be a good team. They're going to be much improved, and they'll be in every game. So again, they're going to be consistent on defense compared to what they were last year, albeit a lot healthier. And Lamar's back. So
Lamar's back.
Lamar is back.
Yeah, I like the Ravens. I think the Ravens are good. I have no hate towards the Ravens. I don't really have much to add to that, honestly. I feel like you did a really good job covering that.
Oh, thanks, buddy.
Gotcha.
You're a good guy. Take back everything I was thinking about you just now.